Welcome to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra Mitchell-Lewis, and thank you for joining. I hope everyone is doing well out there. I hope you all are having a fabulous week so far. Today, I'll be joined by Samantha Fox. Samantha is a licensed marriage and family therapist and sexuality coach, specializing in women coming out later in life after marriage. Stay tuned. I'll be right back with Samantha. Welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thank you all for joining. All right, now I'm so excited to welcome Samantha into the podcast. Welcome to the Gyrl podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you tell everyone out there who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I am a sexuality coach, and I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I specialize in working with women who are discovering their sexuality a little bit later in life, typically after a lifetime of having dated only men or partnering with men or marrying men. And they realize that they are also attracted to women or possibly only attracted to women, but after a life of having lived a heterosexual life. And I have coaching programs. I have a late bloomers boot camp where in community, we meet together and sort of deconstruct everything you've learned so that you can kind of make sense of how you landed here. And I also have a therapy practice where I also specialize in working with couples on their sexual connections, communication, relationship issues, and also individuals. So I'm a therapist and a coach.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Well, let's go ahead and dive into our chat today. First, let's talk about how did you begin working in the LGBTQ community?
Yeah. So I had my own experience of having been married to a man. I had 3 young children. And at the age of 32, I realized that, I didn't really realize, it sort of just kind of exploded into my life that I met somebody and I realized that I really had been unhappy in a way that was unsustainable in my marriage, and I exited my marriage. And so I kind of went through all of these stages and phases of questioning. And this was all the way back in 2002. So it was at a time where there was a lot less support. Today, there's a lot more acceptance, not enough, but a lot more than there was back then. And so I went through this journey myself of, separating, divorcing, which in and of itself is just so difficult, even when it's for reasons that just have to do with your own relationship not working out for whatever reason. But then add on top of it an entire new identity and new way of being in the world that is not really widely accepted. And, it's a lot to get through. And so having gone through that journey myself, I decided to focus my practice, my therapy practice, on working with women going through this journey. And then during COVID, I realized that there was this tsunami effect of women that were coming out later. And I think it had a lot to do with, a couple things, which is sort of like the realization of life is short. During COVID, and it was kind of like this fear-filled life is short, and am I really living my true self? And also people being locked up together and, not having all of the distractions that they normally have in life to keep them from really being able to connect to themselves. Those were gone, and all of a sudden they were stuck at home. And so anyway, during the tsunami effect, I realized as my private practice and therapy moved completely online, that I could actually access women around the globe to help them through this process. And so it was during the pandemic that I created the Curious Questioning and Coming Out programs, coaching programs to work with women at all stages of their coming out journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much. There are so many things in there that I want to dig in a little bit deeper on. But first of all, I want to say shout out to you and all the therapists during this time and during the pandemic, because it has been so great that therapy has been, feels like more embraced finally. During like it took the pandemic for people to like actually realize that like they needed to talk to someone. I'd started therapy prior to the pandemic and was already just like in just awe of like the growth opportunities, right? The learning about yourself. But so shout out to all of you and all the therapists out there, because the work that you do and what you do for people is so, so amazing. And especially even though, we're somewhat back in life again, I think a lot of people are still very much struggling with things that are happening in the world. Because like you said, I think the pandemic and being sort of stuck and having to stand still caused a lot of people to actually like think about like who they are and what do they really want in their life and what will bring them joy.
Yes.
And so okay, so let's rewind back to just even your own personal story. You said you had 3 young children.
Yes.
If you don't mind sharing, what was it like for you to like even have that discussion with like your partner at the time that you needed something different for your life?
Yeah. So, my own circumstances were, I think, very difficult compared to a lot of other women, just in terms of the dynamic between the two of us, like the relational dynamic. My ex-husband was 16 years older than me. I was his second wife, and there was not the whole way it happened, as I said, it kind of wasn't really like I realized that I needed this. It was like it landed on me and kind of exploded. So it was very sudden. And for that, I really feel for him, because that could not have been easy. So it was not like a discussion. It was sort of like, this is happening now, which, did not go over well. And so unfortunately, in my particular situation, I spent 3 years living under the same roof with him as we litigated through a very difficult separation. And then I moved out. And the kids were, shared custody, and my kids are now in their 20s. My ex-husband has remarried not that long after we split up, maybe about 3 years after we split up, to a wonderful woman that he is still with, and they are so perfectly matched. I mean, he couldn't have found somebody better. So I'm very, very happy for them. And of course, we've co-parented and, stayed on that team together as best as we could through all of these years to do the best we could for our kids, even though we had our differences. So I have found that my situation is absolutely not every woman's situation.
Right. But you were able to find a peace at the end of it. I know it was hard. You went through a struggle. You went through a journey, which allows you to be able to help other women. Because you've gone through it. And like you said, your situation may be different, but there may be someone who's listening, watching now that is in your similar situation.
Yes.
And is going to take something from you today. Okay, so let's talk about the misconception. So you said for you, it just sort of landed. You didn't know, it just happened and you were there. Now, there may be some women who are, thinking about it, may be wondering and thinking about coming out, later in life. What type of misconceptions do you think exist that stop or prohibit people from maybe taking that next step?
I think there are more of those than not, So, taking the next step, I want to just say for anybody out there who's even, having these kinds of feelings, is terrifying. And that's understandable and that's super valid. I think what I find with a lot of women is that because they've only lived one way, and because of the way society has certain social constructs like compulsory heterosexuality, which is essentially the moment you're born, whether you're male or you're female, the path has been laid out for you. And we just go along the path without asking any questions. That when you come to, let's say, be 35 or 40 or 45, and you suddenly start connecting to these feelings, I find women really can doubt themselves a lot. And they kind of question, like, is this real? Can I really be feeling this? Is this like am I having a fantasy about this? Like, what's real and what's fantasy? So I find that is something where women have a really hard time trusting what they actually feel. And so I mentioned compulsory heterosexuality. And then the other piece that really comes up for women that I think becomes difficult in this way is people pleasing. And that's another thing as women that we are really taught, right? It's like, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. This was one of my mom's favorite things to say to me. And I mean, she was a beautiful human in all of the ways, absolutely wonderful. And also, this is what she learned. So this is what she told me. And so I think what happens is, as little people, we learn to disconnect from what we're feeling, so that we can please those around us and continue to get the care we need. And therefore, we are just not beings that walk around really connected to our gut and our internal systems. And then you find yourself at 40 having these feelings, and you're kind of doubting them and kind of judging yourself and, not really able to connect to this. So I guess, one of the misconceptions for women with themselves is just like, this isn't real, right? Like, this is not really a real thing. This is just something I'm dreaming about, thinking about, but I'm not going to do anything with it. And so I want to say, you don't really have to do something with it, but what keeps you from just connecting to it and exploring it, right? So that's one of them. Another one is, I've only ever been with men, so how could I possibly be attracted to women? Well, you absolutely can. Sexuality is fluid. The only constant in life is change, right? It's absolutely positive that you did not have any connection to this before now, and now it is popping up. Another one is like, women are hiding this and lying when they come out later in life. No, actually, that's really not the case.
Yeah.
And maybe there are some women that did know, but just were unable to go out into the world for a lot of reasons, of safety reasons, and be their true selves. But a lot of women really did not know on any kind of conscious level. And so they are not lying and they are not hiding. They really did not know. I'm going to just say one more, which is, if I come out, if I admit this to myself or other people, everything I've lived up until now doesn't count and wasn't real. That's a really big one for women. That is not true. Everything you have lived up until now was real, was true. Just because you have internal transformation happening, that does not mean what you have already lived was not real. So those are a couple of things that I find working with women coming out later.
Yeah, well, those are some really important things, because it's like you said, almost all of it ties back to allowing yourself to embrace change and evolution, because we're not meant to be the same people that we were, yesterday, 2 days ago, even last month. And if that involves something different in your life, or something that you want to embrace that wasn't previously there, I mean, that's like, okay. And I know I know it's an easy thing for to say. I can say it because I'm in therapy. So I hear a lot of, and have learned and live by this type of rule. But I know for a lot of people who may be, maybe say you're in a marriage and you have children and you're just, like you said, you're struggling because you don't know if it's like, is this real? Am I just, but I feel like if something's there, if it's in your heart, you owe it to yourself to explore it.
Yes. And if I could just add one more thing that just popped up to me while you were
Mm-hmm.
talking, was one other thing I hear from a lot of women is, if I do explore this, there's only one outcome. And I want to just say that I have seen so many outcomes working with women. I have seen men show up in ways that just are jaw dropping, that are so beautiful. Um, because what they have with their wives are deep connected friendships, and they love and care about these women, and they want them to be able to be more connected to who they are. And I just want to say, like, there are a lot of ways this can play out. There's not just one path. My path was mine, but I've seen women do all different kinds of arrangements to, try to fulfill these feelings that they're having with their husbands. So I just want to say, like, there isn't just one path on this journey either.
That's a really amazing thing. I'm glad you brought that point up because I think people may be thinking that it just means, oh, well, if I explore this, this means everybody in my life is going to turn against me and my husband's going to say, you know, like, going to be angry. I mean, but I think, like you said, there is something beautiful in the sense of being there. As I mean, that's, guess what? When you marry somebody, you have to show up, you have to be there for them, like through all the times. And one thing you did mention that is I think a key thing is the friendship, like being a friend to your spouse and your partner, significant other is like so important. Because I always tell people at this point, like my husband and I have been married for 18 years now, and I always tell people, I'm like, I mean, well, yeah, he's like my best friend. Like we have like, it's even beyond like the fact of when you're younger and you're just like, oh, I'm attracted to somebody and I like them.
Yes.
It's like now it's like, wow, like that's my friend. Like I want to tell him all the things first.
Yes.
And those things like those things have elevated to me as more important than even like that physical side of like who we are as a couple, because that's what's going to like maintain and hold your relationship, is the fact that you can communicate and be friends first.
Absolutely. And I see women go through this, and I see them maintain and build different relationships with their husbands on the other side, that are, vacationing together, getting together still. I have women who, have girlfriends and their husbands have girlfriends, and they nest and move in and out of their homes, or home. They have one home where they nest where the kids live, and then
Mm-hmm.
they move in and out with their partners. And I mean, I just see all kinds of arrangements that work for people, for the present time. And it's really inspiring.
Awesome. And so now earlier you mentioned that people pleasing is something that like sort of rears once women are going through this journey. Now, first of all, a lot of women struggle with that from just from just the beginning of just being women. We,
Right.
like you said, we feel like we have to please other people. We have to like do the things that to make everybody else around us happy.
Happy.
So when someone is walking this journey later in life, and that people pleasing personality like takes more of an effect, like what have you seen as far as like how does that manifest, I guess, in this new space?
Yeah, I mean, what I see is the way I like to think about this is that as women, well, I think as humans, we all can tend to develop some people pleasing parts of us. I like to say parts of us, and that these parts are the ones that help us navigate our families of origin so that we can get our needs met, because we have a natural drive as humans to survive and to thrive. But this is really, survival tactics, like, you need your needs met. Therefore, you're going to learn what things about your behaviors are going to continue to help you get your needs met. So this is a very human way of existing as a small person with no tools. I think layered on top of that is that women are sort of put into a lot of boxes about what we're meant to be and have to be. And like, there's really just one way to be a woman in the world, and that not being sad and not being angry and sort of not showing all of yourself, so that you keep all those people around you comfortable, happy. You don't want to cause any sort of ruffle any feathers, rock the boat anywhere, right? So on top of just this natural drive to survive, then we also have being female and what that means, which is that you are now very pleasing to the world, in every way: how you look, how you speak, what emotions you share, what words you use. So, this is really a big problem for women coming to realize that they are attracted to women, because I'm going to say, people pleasing part, because we are not people pleasers. We have parts that have learned to be people pleasing. And I make this distinction because it's really important in the healing of your people pleasing part to be able to pull that out as, this is not who you are. This is what a part of you has learned to do in order to survive. But these parts can be huge, and they can be fully hijacking of your system, and they can take over and really block you and block your energy from being able to transform. And the work I do with women is really to unpack the people-pleasing parts, and in a way where we can create a relationship between the woman who is an adult today, who is not living under the roof of her parents anymore, her family of origin anymore, who is now an adult out in the world and has agency and has choices, and the part of her that taught her to survive just by pleasing everybody, and kind of build a relationship between the two of them, so that the people-pleasing part can soften a little bit. When it's unexamined and women come out later in life, they will continue to just use this same part, or the part will continue to hijack them in their new relationships as well. So if you've been in a relationship where your whole focus is the other person and just keeping them happy, then you will continue to go into a relationship now with a woman and continue to please them and just make them happy and comfortable, still not really being able to connect to what is authentically you, what are your wants and needs. Some people are like, oh my God, I have no idea what I want. I have no idea what I need, right? And so getting into this kind of work, which is like deconstruction work, which is what I do a lot with women, is going to help women who have these people-pleasing parts in any relationship.
I love that you talk about the parts, and it's not the whole. Like it's the parts,
Yes.
and it is like and it is like survival tactics, right? Because you have to do it as a woman. You almost have to do it in like every area of your life. Whether it's like in your career. Oh yeah, you don't want to be too loud. You don't want to be seen as or don't be too aggressive in the meeting. So you have to like, go into that retreat, into that place where you're like, oh, I'm this other person today, so I'm going to do this thing. But one thing I'd like to ask is like, what happens when it, for a lack of a better way of saying, like when it just bubbles to the top? Because if there's this disconnection of like feelings and knowing what you need and really knowing what is satisfying to you, because you're just going around doing for other people, almost like this mask so that you can just please somebody else. You got the smile like on all the time. What happens when it like just reaches that boiling point?
Where you just can't do that for another second?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, radical honesty kind of comes out usually. I mean, it's sort of, something that what I like to call is like the pendulum swing, right? So like we go from one side where the pendulums, got you locked into the smiling mask that's super pleasing and pretty for everybody. And then when the mask just cracks and falls down, the pendulum can swing all the way to the other side. And you know, I mean, I'd like to say radical honesty is really probably something more in kind of in the middle of the pendulum swing. Because I think what can happen when the mask cracks and the pendulum swings is something very intense, and it can be a lot of anger, and it can be a lot of aggression, and I think, first of all, I think that that's very valid, and I think a lot of women need to get in touch with that, because at the end of the day, like, whoever masterminded that we have to live in these boxes,
Right.
like, that is worth being very angry about, that we've spent years having to be in those boxes. So I think it's okay to be like aggressively angry and upset and kind of say all the things. I do think that radical acceptance of yourself and kind of deconstructing all the things that have been placed upon you as a female will help you come to a place of radical honesty where you can speak from your truth without having to be like aggressive about it. That takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of unpacking and deconstructing and acceptance. And when you can actually come into that acceptance, see all of the parts of you that have helped you survive and love them to death instead of trying to get rid of them, so that they can soften and give you space to lead from your true self, then we are able to enter a place of radical acceptance and radical honesty. And, at the end of the day, some people might fall off from your life.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens. And that is data that you might want, because do you really want somebody in your life that you're spending energy on that is not really loving you for who you are, but for who they want you to be?
Exactly. Yes. Oh my gosh, you said that was a lot. And that was so great, because it's so true. And I think as women, we have to become comfortable with being able to like let people go. And I think that because a lot of times, people are just holding on to people who don't give good energy, aren't pouring into them, just people who are taking always. And eventually I'm like, you just have to get I'm totally fine with like saying goodbye to people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, and I think, the time during the pandemic really helped with that, because for me, it was like when you weren't around and seeing people all the time, when you had to see people all the time, then you sort of had to make these things work. Because it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to see that person. We're going to hang out. We're going to do these things. Or I'm going to go to work and be around this person. And then now, and when you have that time away, you're like, oh, I haven't seen them in 2 years. And so now, and then you were able to like, just really focus on like what you needed.
Yes.
What was important for your soul, for you to find happiness. And if those people weren't providing or pouring into that, then, I mean, I was totally just like, okay, deuces, bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, oh yes. Thank you for those additional nuggets. We love that. So I want to ask you, if there is someone out there, a woman listening or watching us right now, and maybe just not sure, might be curious about what to do.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say are some steps that someone she could take to start this journey?
So I mean, I love that you said that this person is curious about what to do, because I think, the problem that I think all humans face is finding a way to be curious. I think that, we live in a world where knowing is highly valued, right? Like, the answer, you have the answer already. So finding a way to actually be curious is the first step. So, like, what do you think about being curious in the world and asking yourself questions about just being a curious human is taking the first step. I do have a free little course on my website. It's a 3-day course, which kind of helps you break down and deconstruct compulsory heterosexuality, which I think is a great first step. It is about curiosity. It is about just asking yourself the first few questions about, like, like, what is it that makes you exist in the world in the way that you exist in the world? Is it because it's coming from you, or is it coming from somewhere else? Like, start to listen internally to what is happening. And it takes you through the steps of how to do that. So I would encourage anybody who has some curiosity about this to just take the course and just see what it's like to dive a little bit deeper into being a curious human in this area. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean that you're gay. It doesn't mean, that you're leaving your marriage. It doesn't mean anything. It just means you're kind of curious, right?
Yeah. Awesome. I like it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about, how you work with women and the types of programs you offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I found when I came out in 2002, it's like literally just past my 20-year anniversary, was I thought I was the only person in the entire world to be going through what I was going through. And so one of the things that I love about doing this work is the community aspect. So I offer a program which is called Late Bloomers Boot Camp. It's an 8-week coaching program where you are with women that are in any stage of being curious about their sexuality, any stage from having the tiniest little itch to they're fully out, they were married, now they're divorced, now they're partnered with a woman. So it really covers all of these women. And what we do in the 8 weeks is we do a lot of deconstruction. So we deconstruct your sexual narratives, like who you are in the world as a sexual being. We deconstruct people pleasing, internalized homophobia, shame, receiving pleasure, and then we also talk about like emotional education, right? This is not something that a lot of us did not grow up having any kind of an emotional education in school. We don't learn about this. I think today they're starting to change that a little bit. I'm learning, but so in community, you work alongside other women with your own reflection work that you do during the week when we're not meeting. And it's an 8-week program. And the transformations I see are unbelievable. That's one of my programs. I love that one. I love the community aspect. I also work with women doing a program which is called True North. It's 6 months, so it's a little bit more intensive. It's a little bit more of, you have to really commit. And it's 14 live sessions. So we meet one-on-one over the 6 months, and then you have unlimited asynchronous coaching. So we video each other back and forth. Could be Monday to Friday, every day. You send me a video about where you are. I give you reflection work to do in between. And this is for someone who wants to really like work through something or just really needs support. I have some women who do this program that are in the middle, like in the messy middle is what I call it. They're in the middle of separating and they need support. And yes, they can work with a therapist, but the therapist is 45 minutes once a week. And this is essentially could be everyday kind of work, and somebody that you can reach out to at any point. So if you need that kind of support while you're on your journey at any point, that's the True North program. And then I also have a couples coaching program, and I have an individual coaching program, which is more just like you just get a package of sessions and you get to work with me one-on-one. So all of these are my coaching programs. As a therapist, I only work with women in New York. I'm licensed in New York. So yeah. So I happen to feel as a therapist that these programs are kind of like taking, I don't know, 5 or 10 years of therapy and condensing them in a very focused way to work on exactly what you need to work on and get you the results you need, in a way that that's different from the therapy I do, which is a lot about like the therapeutic relationship and all of that. So, yeah, these are my programs. Seen amazing transformations.
Okay, love that. And where can they find out more? So where can they connect to you?
Yeah, so I am on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, all at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. And my website is curiousquestioningandcomingout.com. isnt.com, and you can find out everything about me and my programs and my resources right on the website.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for this great discussion. I have enjoyed talking to you and learning more today. Now, we're going to go into our next to last segment, 3 Things with Samantha. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, just to help the audience get to know you a little bit better. So first, how do you start a 2-parter? How do you start and end your days?
Okay, so my days, I'm one of those people that just waking up, the first thing I think about is my cup of coffee. And it's become like a romanced ritual for me. So getting up and just getting my cup of coffee and sitting with I have 2 little poodles that I love so dearly, and sitting on the couch, having my coffee with my little guys. That is the start of my day.
Awesome.
Ending my day, pretty much, I don't know, for any of you out there that like don't have animals, it might be hard to understand, but my guys are just, they're like my therapy animals, and so the end of the day, I mean, I've taken in a lot of information. I've put out a lot of information usually. So really just, again, usually I use like one of those foam rollers that is on the floor, and I roll myself out on a foam roller while I'm playing with my dogs. That's how I end my day.
I love it. I love it. You start and end with your fur babies.
Yes.
I like that.
Yes.
Okay. Question number 2. If you are someone who sets goals or intentions for yourself at the start of the year, do you mind sharing one thing that you set for yourself this year? And where are you, since we're like almost heading into the Q4 almost. We're in Q3 now.
Yeah. So, for any of you that go out and actually look for me on social media, you will see me as this like pretty outgoing person. The goal that I have set for myself is for this year, which I think, we're halfway there. I still have to continue, but is to really put myself out there with my radical honesty, and to not allow my introvert self, which I am an introvert, which is really hard for people to even imagine when you watch me on social media. A few years ago, I could have never imagined that I would have the content that I have out there. So for this year, it has been to be to really like put myself out there in a way that is just going to help people, to create content that is like, it's sort of like an energy flow that is just going out into the world, and and comes back to me to like inform me and sort of like create this energy circle. So it's happening. I'm there. I think there's still a few more steps to it that as an introvert I have to break through. But yeah, it's happening. I'm well on my way.
Awesome. I love that. And thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of times people assume that people who are like front facing in a camera or creating content, that means that you're like an extrovert and that you love it. I mean, it takes a lot to put yourself out there for other people to see and view.
Yes, it really does, especially when you're an introvert. So hence the rolling at the end of the day on the floor with my dogs. I mean, whatever therapy I can get back, I need it.
Yeah, awesome. All right. And lastly, what do you do on a day off?
I do tons of self-care. So I'm just a self-care junkie. So I'm a cyclist. I'm a Pilates enthusiast. I'm a yogi. I was trained as a yoga teacher back in 2003. So whether it's like getting a massage, going to a sauna, like infrared sauna, I'm obsessed with those, or cycling, or any kind of exercise, my days off usually need to have some of that in them. And then I really try to just kind of like almost like find stillness in my day, because I mean, I don't even know if there are like full days off. My mind is constantly going and constantly creating content. So yeah. So as much as I can, I try to fill myself with those kinds of things just to be able to give my nervous system a little bit of a break.
Yes. Awesome. I like that. All right. And before I let you go, could you leave the audience with 3 takeaways from our discussion today?
Yes, absolutely. So I would say, well, number 1 would be that our sexualities are not a given. So you're not born one way and stay that way the rest of your life. And if you're female, it doesn't mean that you're straight. Nothing is a given. So that's one takeaway. Question everything, unpack everything, deconstruct everything. I guess really check in with how much your inner people pleaser is leading you through life. And, see if you can like notice it, right? Kind of like separate from it a little bit and then start to work with it and get curious about it. And when you're able to live in radical acceptance of yourself, you are going to open up channels of energy that have been blocked up until now. So working on radical acceptance is such an important part of this one time through you have in life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great takeaways. Well, Samantha, I have really enjoyed chatting with you. And I love that the fur baby made an appearance here at the end.
Yes.
I didn't want to interrupt you when you were talking, but I got really excited. And I was like, fur baby. But thank you so much for taking time to join me today. You can always come back and share more in the future with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Gyrl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thanks again to Samantha for joining the show today. If you want to learn more about her and her program, check out the links in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about Glow Up Gyrl, you can visit us at glowupgirl.com. You can check out past podcast episodes, grab our social links, and also if you'd like to be a guest or if you know someone, you can fill out our Be a Guest form to join the show. I also hope you're checking out our new episodes that are career focused. These episodes are where I share my personal journey related to my career. These episodes are great for anyone who is looking to understand their strengths, elevate in their current career, or pivot in their career journeys. But ultimately, they're really focused on helping you to create a career that you love. And you can also check those out at glowupgirl.com or your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Thank you all again for joining me today. I hope you have a great rest of the week, and I'll see you next week. Until then, stay focused, fab, and glow up. Take care, everyone.